Anesha, I'm thrilled to have you here at Fal.Con 2020. I think it's going to be a great session. So let's just jump into it. So if you look at what's happening today, in your opinion, what's the current problem facing the majority of women of color in the tech industry?
Sure. Well, first off, George, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here to talk about this topic and to represent Black Girls Code and this issue. And so to get right to your question, I think it's important for us to just think about the numbers, right? So women represent half of the workforce in the United States, but only 25% of the jobs in technology or in the technical field. And I think it goes back to the very beginning when we are exposing our young women to STEM and to a lot of these opportunities. So the biggest issue is just awareness and also I think a little bit of imposter syndrome. So our young women feeling comfortable in pursuing STEM and in pursuing opportunities in technology. If we think about middle school, so even for young women that young, 74% of them express an interest in STEM, in pursuing these types of careers. But then when they get to college, only 0.3% of the girls who express interest are actually pursuing STEM as majors or pursuing CS. And really thinking about these topics. And so that's why Black Girls Code, we want to start really early. A lot of our sessions are targeted at our girls who are 7 to 10, because we know early access, early conversations about STEM, about technology will help girls build confidence so that when they get to middle school, that interest stays more than an interest and becomes a passion. And then by the time they get to college, they're able to pursue it as well. And then if we think about the numbers even beyond that, Black women and Latinx women and Native American women aren't even staying in the field once they are pursuing those degrees. And so when we think about college level, only 3% of Black women are graduating with STEM degrees, and it's 1% for Latinx and Native American women. So we really want to think about at BGC, how do we get young women, one, to pursue STEM, to pursue computer science, and then once they're pursuing those degrees, how we get them to stay in the field and then pursue jobs and opportunities, which is why also within my role at BGC, we're looking at our alumni program. How are we serving our college students? How are we supporting them as they're pursuing these degrees? And then how are we connecting them to different companies and organizations that are interested in engaging with them? So it's really thinking about the full pipeline of support for African American, Latinx women and other women of color as well.
So I have a couple of questions on that, but let me ask, and I'm probably dating myself and showing my age, but when I was a kid, I learned to first program very young on something called Logo, which was, it was like this kind of graphical, you tell a little turtle what to do. What are girls learning, or kids in general, what are they learning today? Is it Scratch, or is it like, what is the intro programming language? I think that would be, interesting topic for our audience.
Sure, yeah. So it is Scratch. So for us, we are starting very early with our young women around Scratch. And then also we are working to create some pieces around computational thinking, right? So it's more than just learning how to code, learning that specific technical skill, but also wanting our young women to think broadly so that they can take more than those technical specific skills and be able to just think broadly about applying that across the board, beyond Scratch, beyond HTML, beyond CSS. But we do start with those foundational pieces.
There's a clear move to an industry pivot. So what can we do now? What can we do right now to help this?
Sure. So, I mean, when I think about the response I would want to see from the industry, I would pull up 4 kind of core topics. The first would be around exposure. So supporting organizations like BGC and doing what they can within the industry to make sure that girls are exposed to STEM, to technology, to the pathways that they can take to pursue that as early as possible. So exposure. The second would be access. And so what are companies really looking at, what they're doing to bring in people of color, to bring in women into their spaces, looking at their recruitment, looking at internship opportunities, looking at all the different pipelines that are giving these underrepresented communities access to those companies or access to opportunity. And then the third would actually be opportunity in and of itself, right? So how are we creating talent that exists within the industry? and how are you nurturing that talent once they are involved? So even if you have a young woman who's pushing into the STEM, pushing into the careers, what are opportunities we're creating? Are we mentoring? Are we supporting them? And then again, that builds into the fourth pillar or the fourth topic, which would be support in and of itself. That a lot of companies need to think about their work culture, think about how they're set up. Are these spaces conducive to inclusivity, conducive to diversity, and conducive to women actually wanting to stay in those spaces, to work for those companies, to interact with their colleagues in a lot of different ways? So like I said, exposure, opportunity, access, and support would be the ways that I would want the industry to be thinking about how they're working to engage and support young women and people of color into the industry and into the space. And so I guess to that end, I think it would be helpful to understand and to kind of flip that question back onto you. So what are you all doing at CrowdStrike to really, really address this in order to ensure that you all have a more diverse workforce and a more inclusive culture?
We'll talk about at the candidate stage, but it really starts before that. It starts in the educational area, you know, similar to what you're doing. You're starting a little bit younger than we are, but we spend a lot of time with our CrowdStrike Foundation, which is our nonprofit charity, in helping all types of people get through college, focusing on cybersecurity. So we believe that it starts at the educational level, and we're trying to do what we can in those areas. We have people that are involved in schools. We have people, I mean, obviously scholarships and donations, one thing, but also people investing their time and effort to help mentor and grow people. So, so then once we get them through school, we've got a very robust internship program. We've got hundreds of interns that run through our program every year. And to fuel that passion as young as we possibly can, I think is step one. Step two really then is in terms of what do we have internally. By no means are we perfect. Even things like, you know, changing our job specs, you know, and you know, personally, I have no idea that if you made a small tweak in, you know, how you phrase something and how you crafted it, it's a big deal for, you know, female candidates and people of color and diversity. So we went through and made some tweaks there. And I think that's the area that, you know, we're focused on today. It's not a destination, it's a journey. And, you know, I think in general, tech does a really poor job. And we certainly recognize that we're not perfect. And it's a journey of doing better and better and having these groups. But to your point then is once you have these candidates in, you have to get them to stay. How do we provide a path so that we can get people, you know, again, either females, people of color to stay, et cetera, so that as they move up to the executive ranks, we have a much more diverse team. So that's what we're focused on today. Like I said, it's a journey, not a destination, and we continue to learn and get better. And, you know, we appreciate, you know, partnering with organizations like yourself.
I mean, I'm really excited to hear that and to know that you're thinking about it. I mean, a lot of folks are right now in the space of wanting to reflect. And I think that that's a really critical goal for a lot of organizations to do, to step back, look at your practices, look at your approach, and then think about what are the strategies you can put in place in order to be more inclusive and more supportive. And I'm especially excited to hear you thinking about the specs requirements and job descriptions. Like, yeah, the verbs, the adjectives that are used are more inviting, more inclusive, and more supportive for certain groups. And so I appreciate that, you know, you all are even getting down to the nitty-gritty on that level.
And then we get together, I'm in a group with a bunch of other SaaS CEOs from like SurveyMonkey and PagerDuty and Slack and others. And we really try to share best practices and hook our head of HRs, you know, our chief human resource officers up, because there's just so much, you know, good thinking that's going on. We know we don't have all of it. So what are the best practices? How do we get better? How do we avoid unintended bias, things of that nature? So, you know, as I said, it's an evolution, but we want to get better and better at.
And I think that speaks to one piece that BGC focuses on too, when you're saying that you're connecting with other, you know, CEOs and leaders, because BGC for us, what we think is our secret sauce, what makes us successful, what makes us stand apart from other organizations that are working to, you know, teach young people how to code is community. Mm-hmm. It's really relying on the communities that we're able to create within our chapters, the communities that we create across other nonprofit organizations, and the community we create with organizations like yours in order to really deepen access, those access, exposure, support pieces. Community and the network that we build is really, really critical. So I'm glad that you all are looking at your community as well to think about how you restructure or how you expand or change to make sure opportunities are more available to people of color and to women.
So what can participants at Fal.Con do individually or within their own respective companies to help combat these sort of issues? This is not just an issue of the manufacturers, like the tech companies that are offering these services, but most companies now, somewhere, some place, they're building their own products, applications, coding. What can they do?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think the first step would be what you've already talked about, which is really stepping back and examining one's own biases, right? So looking at what are the practices that existed in that company before that might have been keeping women and people of color out. And then the next piece I would say, after you've done those biases, after you speak up about those biases, after you put in the work to try to correct some of those biases, is really for individuals to figure out how they can be involved in their companies or within the industry overall, to speak to some practices around that. And then that involvement could come through volunteering at organizations like Black Girls Code, or figuring out how to become a mentor within your own company and industry. We really, within BGC, the reason we want to diversify, the reason we want to increase the visibility of Black women is because we know for folks, it's what you know that you can become what you see, and you can't become what you can't see. And so having folks who are mentors, who are stepping up, creating pathways, whether those are women of color now, or even, men, and other folks who might be more typical in the space, finding mentees that they can pull up, that they can support and bring along with them.
Yeah, I like that. I think mentoring people certainly goes a long way. So we're going to get wrapped up here. I just want to let you know that the CrowdStrike Foundation is donating $50,000 to Black Girls Code. It's an awesome organization. We hope to be hiring a bunch of your folks as they continue to graduate. So that would be, I think, a great outcome. And also, we want to make sure that people at Fal.Con can help participate and get involved. So what we're going to do is we're going to donate all of the profits from any of the swag store sales for the rest of the month to Black Girls Code. So this goes to my last question. What can people do? They can go buy a bunch of swag. All the profits go to you guys. And just an amazing organization. We're thrilled to be able to help out. And we'd love to be hiring and interning a bunch of the folks that come through your program.
That's so great. Thank you so much on behalf of Black Girls Code. Really appreciative of that donation and of the swag. So yes, please go buy some swag and support the conference, and also support Black Girls Code. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much, George.
Okay, thanks, Anesha, and we'll talk soon.
Yep, take care.